In this video, I'm going to show you how to create an association with the joints and the geometry that I have enabled. So at this point, I can focus more on the perspective view because I'm not going to be making any more joints. So I'm going to get that one out of the way. And now in here, I have a chain of shoulder and I have a chain of joint shoulder. This is going to go all the way down, and the only thing that I need to do is change from modeling, which is the usual workspace, to rigging. Inside of rigging, I'm going to have some options to create the constraints, to create all of the skinning and all of the rest of the execution. So I'm going to select shoulder, and I'm going to hold control and click on shoulder over here, so that way I can get selection on both of them. I cannot do that in here because as soon as I try to do a marquee selection, the joints are going to be selection override, so nothing else but joints are going to get selected. So I need to select them in the outliner. When I select the two of them, what I have to do now is go to my skin and then bind the skin. Just as simple as that. Using the default settings for my skin options, I am able to just manipulate one with the other one. What is going to happen though, it's going to try to make it as organic as possible, and the default settings are really old inside of Maya. There are new, better techniques and methods to do a rigging that are not entirely in here, at least not on the default. So notice how it is going to look pretty painful on soft movements on the joints. Also, notice that this joint shouldn't really be affecting this area. This is a finger. It shouldn't really be affecting the arm at all. The way that Maya creates this is by default, if I go to my skin options, going to be by joint hierarchy, which is the old way of creating these paint weights. I will be explaining paint weights in a minute, but painting the actual influences that the joints are going to have over my objects. So by default, this joint hierarchy and this closest distance, all of these are the defaults. So while this is okay, it doesn't really do a good job. And then what I have to do is start cleaning up the influences. So if I select this joint and then modify, it was this one. If I select this one and modify it, notice that I modified also the arm. So the next thing that I will need to do is select this object, then click on paint, which is this little icon over here. So perform a actually it's this icon over here, so paint my weights, and that is going to show me the areas of influence that that joint is going to have on a particular shell. So I'm selecting the parent. That should be selecting everything. So the green ones are not having any influence, the black ones are influence a little bit, or actually they are not getting influenced, but it's not entirely black. This is somewhat of a grayish scale. So if I click on the tool settings here, which is this hammer, what it's going to show me is all of the joints that are even influencing this particular shoulder. So how do I take a look at that? If I click on shoulder, shoulder is influencing this area the most. If I hit J arm, it is influencing this area the most, and so forth. So what I need to do is find out the joint that I have, that I'm working on, and that is going to be finger 02. And as you can see, I have some whites over here. So what I want to do is go to my paint and then replace. That's what I want to do. I don't want to add or scale or anything. I want to do replace. The opacity is going to be 1, but the value is going to be 0. Then I can make this brush larger by holding V and then left click and drag it out. This is going to be showing me the areas of influence. Sometimes it's easier to see it with the ramp color, so click the ramp color if needed. But I find that personally it gets in my way, so I'm just going to be taking it out. And then when I start painting these areas of influence, I'm going to be removing those areas. Do you see that? So I painted over these areas. I can do that with this thing as well. I need to be removing those areas of influence here and here, so all of them. And it's sort of a tedious process, especially because it actually needs to be posed in many different ways. So painting the influences is not entirely fun for me. For some people is, but for me it's not entirely beautiful. Once it works in a particular pose, I need to make sure that it's working in a different one, and so forth and so forth. I'm gonna show you a better way of doing this, because technically I have to do that for every single joint in multiple joint pieces. So painting the influence for me personally is not fun. Some people find it relaxing. That's okay, but it's not my favorite thing in the world to do. So I'm going to be working with newer tools that Maya has that are going to be making this a more elegant process. So I'm gonna go and click on my object. I will go to my skin, and then I'll say go to bind pose. That is basically going to take all of the joints and reset the transformations to 0. Once I have that, what I want to is remove the influence these joints have on the geometry. So I'm going to go to my skin and unbind my skin. When I do that, that is going to leave the geometry as it was before, and there's no influence whatsoever on the joints. You want to go skin and then go to bind pose before we remove the skin, because otherwise the skin or the mesh is going to stay in the form that it was before. So that is it from this video. The next one is going to be showing you how to make a better skinning. So I'm going to be talking about that skinning next.